All right, so let's look at page 5. All right, so right here we got a graph. Yippity doo dah, right? It's a graph of some polynomial function. So the first thing they want us to do is state the zeros. So all I need to do is look for these dots on the x-axis because those are x-intercepts. X-intercepts are when y equals 0, which is almost the definition of what a 0 is. So it looks like I have 4, -4, -2, +1, +3, and +5. So my zeros, -4, -2, 1, 3, and 5. So anybody got any questions on that? Those are the zeros for this function. All I did was look for the x-intercepts, these dots here, and I followed the graph. All right. So now I'm going to write an expression for the graph in factor form using c as a constant factor. So what the heck does that mean? Well, I'm going to start with y equals, or f of x equals. Either one would be acceptable. Okay. You might want to say y because we're thinking of a graph, but you don't have to. Next thing I'm going to do is write c, because c is this constant that I don't know what it is. Okay, I need to know what that constant is. The next thing I do is look at my zeros. So if -4 is a 0, I know one of the factors is x plus 4 because -4 is a 0. I also know that if -2 is a 0, then my next factor is x plus 2. And then I keep looking at the zeros, so my next factor is x minus 1, x minus 3, and x minus 5. And that's it. That's what they want. That's it. I know it's terrible, isn't it? Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So now, without graphing, identify the end behavior of the polynomial and write it in standard form. So we got to write this thing in standard form. We got to get what the degree is. We got to have the sign of the leading coefficient, and then and then determine what that means for our end behavior. All right. Now I want to post this chart, but I'm just going to sketch it down here real quick. So let's see. I apologize for how compact this is. Does everybody understand what I just wrote down here? Does everybody understand what I just wrote down here? Yep. Depending on the degree of the polynomial and whether the leading coefficient is positive or negative. So I'm going to use that in this. I got a couple things. So we'll figure that out. But right now, I just want to get through this. So, what's the degree of this first polynomial equation? Say it again. It's not -3, it's just 3. The degree is just the highest exponent. No problem. It's 3. Well, if it was negative, then that wouldn't be the highest. Remember, highest is not just the biggest number, it means the biggest number. So -3 wouldn't wouldn't be a highest. All right. And now, what's the leading coefficient? Now, the leading coefficient, or excuse me, the sign of the leading coefficient, you could kind of figure it out, but I would almost say that it'd be easier to find the degree either before or after you find you rewrite it in standard form. Then you're looking at the leading coefficient because that's what standard form means. Standard form, the highest exponent is going first, and you go down to where you have no exponent. So if I rewrite this in standard form, it is 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus x plus 1. So what's the leading coefficient? What's the leading coefficient? It's 2. And what's the sign of the leading coefficient? It was positive. So now, if I go to my little chart down here, I got a degree of 3. Is that even or odd? That is odd. So I have an odd degree, right? Odd degree. Then my sign is positive. So according to my chart right here, as x approaches negative infinity, right? As x approaches negative infinity, y is approaching what? Negative infinity because it's going down. As x approaches positive infinity going this way, y is approaching what? Positive infinity is going up. And that's how I deal with them behavior. So we look at the next one. You know what? I think I'm going to leave the next one for you. All right. So I'll say again, does anybody have any questions on what we just did here? Anybody have any questions? You could write it in standard form first, then you could get the degree and leading coefficient, or you could just look at it and get both that information and then write it. It's just to me, I think it's easier if you write it in standard form first. It kind of minimizes you making a mistake. Nobody has any questions on either of these problems. Okay. So, and no more questions.